Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb, in the sweltering New York City. We are here at the Trading Tech Briefing from the ATM Group, and it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Alex from Amazon. Alex, how are you?
Great, thanks Toby.
Listen, wonderful to have you on the show. Really exciting. You've been out there beforehand, you've been on the panel,
Yeah.
Your work's nearly done here today. Now you can get on to enjoying it. But tell us a little bit about it. Look, Amazon AWS has been all over the financial markets recently. We've seen this massive advance of recent times. You've been omnipresent at these sort of events recently. Tell us a little bit about where you fit into it, your background, and then obviously AWS, which needs no introduction.
Yeah, sure. So I and my team, we're the capital markets market development team, and we all come from a background of financial markets. So prior to working at Amazon, I spent about 6.5 years on the trading floor, 4 of which were in London with HSBC, where I sold Asian equities to hedge funds and held a few roles in FX sales and debt origination. And I spent 2.5 years in Macquarie selling Asian equities to hedge funds out of New York. And I did a little bit of time in Purgatory as an analyst at a multi-asset hedge fund in London as well. And that kind of background is pretty common on our team of capital markets market development specialists who effectively function to bridge the gap between the development from a technical perspective that we're pushing out at an incredible rate in Seattle and the unique needs that we see in capital markets and financial services generally, right? And so at AWS, I lead business development for financial market infrastructure providers across all asset classes, market types, both lit and dark, as well as trading connectivity to exchanges. And that's a pretty wide range, right? When we say trading connectivity, that's basically anyone from like the Robinhoods of the world, which happy customer. I use them for my trading on my phone, so not latency sensitive at all. Oftentimes multiple hops between when I execute and when an order is effectively kind of matched, all the way down to low latency order execution management solutions and platforms and algorithmic trading engines. And so we have a range of people on our team and our sister teams globally that focus on all of capital markets, the unique kind of areas for specific subcategories. So investment banks who have their own kind of requirements that are different from quant funds, that are different from data providers, that are different from our technology partners. So that's kind of what we do and how we function. Now that that's out of the way, today was a really incredible panel where the focus was on this topic that you may or may not have heard a little bit about over the last few years, only if you're paying attention.
I know where this is.
Really close attention. So generative AI was kind of the scope and really the trends that the industry is seeing from it, adopting this. I was going to say novel technology, but it's been around from a popularization perspective for about 2.5 years, right? You think about 2022 when ChatGPT really was released to the public, and you had incredible innovators in the LLM provider space like the Anthropics, the world, the Llamas, the Coheres.
Felt like an overnight sensation, didn't it?
Right? That now are such ingrained components of our life and are becoming more and more advanced. If you think about agentic workflows, right? Yeah. These kind of discrete deployments of LLMs that are capable of handling increasingly complex workflows, right? Like functioning as an intelligent research assistant that we're seeing with the quant funds. So like Bridgewater has spoken extensively about this, and Ali Asni recently presented at one of our conferences in New York about how they're building, I don't want to call them a chatbot because that diminishes their effectiveness and how powerful they are, but really intelligent assistants that can respond to queries in natural language and in Python and produce outputs, financial analysis, economic analysis, trend analysis, whatever you kind of put it at the level you'd expect of a first or second year analyst, right? At a fraction of the time. When these kind of market participants are talking about the impact, the benefit, they're talking about being able to get insights, in minutes, or if they're going to do a deep research report in an hour. These are processes that would have taken days before, to really get deep on a stock or in a sector or kind of specific, a security. So condensing that time to insight and accelerating innovation is really one of these incredible themes that we're seeing, right? And from our perspective, when we kind of talk about Gen AI, we're seeing it from a whole range of use cases. Intelligent assistance is one of the more complicated ones because of the work that has to go into optimizing the model, ensuring you have the appropriate data stores, right? Ensuring from an observability and an accuracy level, the really deep techniques you use to fine train your model and use RAG architectures, right, to get the best outcomes and minimize hallucinations. But we're seeing the entire spectrum from leveraging Gen AI to do your coding, right? That's something that's really out of the box that I, as someone who's not technical, even though I work at AWS, can use a chat interface and with natural language have an application be built, right? Or if I'm more technical, say, hey, help me code in pick a language, Java, right? Or really great use case, we're working with a lot of our kind of customers, the post-trade side, who are running core like clearing, settlement, post-trade applications on mainframes. And these are they're incredible, very important. We as cloud providers, are evolutions from that technology, but not many people know how to code in Siebel, right? And so leveraging these intelligent assistants, Gen AI, to kind of bridge that technical gap and just get a baseline of code, so to again accelerates your modernization journey. So that entire end-to-end use case, right? And the panel really homed in on a range of them, right? From using Gen AI to optimize web scraping, really big use case if we think about capital markets and research, right? Being able to consume and hoover up data from every kind of possible source you can get, especially on the unstructured side, on websites or kind of documents. Doing that with Gen AI is just dramatically easier. S&P spoke about how they're using Amazon Bedrock, which, shameless plug, is our flagship Gen AI platform that lets customers access a range of LLMs from third-party providers like some of the ones I mentioned earlier, Anthropic, Cohere, AI21, Hugging Face, Meta, as well as our own Nova models with a single API securely into their own tenancies. And they used, I think it was a Llama model, to streamline the web scraping of private companies, SMB companies, to launch a credit rating product for private SMB firms, which, if you think about it, it's hard to do. Not many of them really report information because they're not mandated to from a regulatory perspective. Information and kind of data that's reliable is sparse, tough to really make your way through it. Creating indices or baskets of peers also tough because you have to kind of create that taxonomy, right? And they were able to launch a product that kind of rated SMB credit firms, about 100 million firms, by using Gen AI to scrape 40 million websites a week, right? Process 6 million plus, I forget what the number is now, it's only increased, inferences on that underlying data, and build a really beautiful platform that lets customers create analyses, trend lines, reports on demand, right? And we're seeing that kind of core use case, getting that extraction of data, right, and kind of optimizing it for insights and queries across a whole range of use cases. So it's really, really incredible. And one of the exciting things for us, as you were mentioning before, we kind of got into the specifics here, like at Amazon, we're really at the center of this, right? I mentioned Amazon Bedrock, which is kind of one of our platform tools. So we provide customers of varying degrees of sophistication, from the people like me, who are not sophisticated at all, to those who are really pioneering future.
Call yourself non-sophisticated with a moustache like that, Kenny. That's a moustache of pure sophistication.
And joy. I love this, by the way. I grew this because a friend of mine was getting married and he had a mustache. They were like, oh, we're going to bomb all of his photos, photo bomb. And then I grew it, I'm like, this is a pretty
sophistication.
So now, I'm committed. I got the comb, I got the oils, I trim it. Thank you, you've made my day.
Back to scripts.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Gen AI. But yeah, so I think I was in the middle of talking about Bedrock. Right, and making it available and democratizing access, that's really the core focus here. But also kind of building out all the tools needed for customers who really want to do kind of that fine-tuning of models, right? Building their own LLMs, right? Kind of like what Bloomberg did when they built Bloomberg GPT, leveraging Amazon SageMaker to kind of build and train that model for their own internal uses. And so that's really been our focus, right? And kind of going to events like this, big thanks to the team at A-Team for kind of gathering, really leaders in the the space are going to talk about what they're seeing, the tools they're working through, how they expect the future to evolve, some of the pain points too, because we at AWS, we incorporate that, right? 90% of what we build, the things that our sales teams sell, come directly from customers telling us like, hey, like we have this problem, or hey, this doesn't work the way you want. It'd be really great if, right? And the remaining 10% of what we build is from us having strategic conversations with our customer and say, hey, you know, the direction of travel of the world is that way, right? And we should probably build something that will meet that need, right? So really, really incredible. And maybe the last thing I'll give you, you know, like as I mentioned in my kind of little brief background about me, like I focus on, you know, financial market infrastructure, trading, matching engines in the cloud, right? And how customers connect to those venues and run similar execution platforms, right? And if you think about really microstructures of markets, that's a deterministic, tightly, you know, scoped environment that's built, it's purpose-built, right? Like low latency, highly deterministic message flow, and discrete workloads, right? Matching engines, consuming market data, you know, managing risk from an execution perspective, you know, your algo engines, what have you, yeah? And I spent most of the first 2.5 years before 2022, in the fall, focusing on bridging that gap between, you know, cloud infrastructure technology and the needs of increasingly latency sensitive market participants and member firms and markets, really. Now with GenAI, I kind of spend half my time doing both, which is really kind of, it's like a left brain and right brain thing, you know what I mean? Like one side is painting and the other one is like, you know, doing complex algebra. Actually, maybe a little more than that. I'm still counting my fingers, yeah. But it's really, really incredible, you know, and I joke, like I'll have, you know, really detailed and focused conversation about, you know, optimizing algo engines in cloud infrastructure, which a lot of our customers are doing across asset classes, which is incredible. And then in the same meeting, we'll start talking about GenAI, right? You know, and ways of optimizing the research flow, kind of like I was talking about these intelligent assistants, or you know, ways of quickly building an agile market summarization and sentiment analysis tool, like what we've been doing with a lot of the crypto exchanges and Coinbase and New York Stock Exchange, or ways of optimizing, you know, surveillance, right, from the middle office to ensure that people aren't doing things they shouldn't do, right, from an investment bank perspective or from an exchange or regulator perspective, like, you know, NASDAQ and FINRA, and how they've been thinking about running their surveillance platforms and integrating GenAI on AWS. It's so incredible, the direction of travel, and I'm not excited about it at all. I don't
and I think it's, I love the passion that comes out of that, but B, it's also, I think there's been such an advancement over the last 18, even 12 months, where we've sat here and if to rewind to some of the conferences of yesteryear, talking about AI in this space, it's been, we're excited about it, we've got a buzz about it, but hallucinations, lack of trust, approximately right, all of these sort of things have held people back. I mean, that we haven't really seen, we've said, yes, it'd be nice to do this, but it's kind of but when you see, it's all been about building trust, and when we see the likes of AWS come into it, and I love the fact, actually, when you've been talking about this, my view of if you rewind a few years, it was Amazon coming in to disintermediate the capital market space, Amazon to sort of change fintech, it'd be the banks versus Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. And what's actually, I think that's probably what you looked at a few years ago. That's the
I can't comment about that. I think our
but I think it's come through, and just to finish off, I think the beauty of it is it's been an absolute merge of actually we're working together and we're doing something completely better. We're building trust. All the technologies come into it. I love the fact that the institutions have really lent into that Amazon piece and changed the narrative completely. And Amazon have done a phenomenal job at facilitating that whole move and making this industry better, more tech driven, and having a much better play to do into it. And that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't fully jump in and interrupt. That was a really great comment. Thank you. And I couldn't agree with you more. And maybe just kind of from an AWS perspective, our focus from the beginning has never been to disintermediate or kind of like disrupt the industry, but rather to provide the industry, both from established banks and large customers like JP Morgan, right, who are incredible partners of ours, all the way to startups who are looking to transform the industry, like Robinhood, like I just mentioned, right, and provide them the tools to unlock innovation faster in a secure, manageable, and observable way, right? And like that, and it's really refreshing to kind of like hear that from you and from our customers on a daily basis, because like that really is what we're focusing on, right? Like if you think about our role as a technology provider, as like a platform, right, for the cloud, which kind of expands, pretty much every layer of that stack, right, ensuring that we're meeting customers' needs as we scale globally is essential.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like what are we doing? We're not building this for us. We're building this for our customers to leverage these tools and transform the world. Right, from launching no-fee trading applications in the cloud, still on Robinhood with my mind, right, to being able, like Nasdaq, to deploy the first highly regulated, ultra-low latency central limit order book matching engine on cloud infrastructure, and now going live with 3 markets on that, right, to launching low Earth orbit satellites with our Project Kuiper network, which we're building out, to deploying P2P timestamping across all of our infrastructure, and now enabling microsecond granularity for packets coming into our environment. Like that we're building that because these are signals that our customers are saying, hey, we need this, and if you provide it, it will help us unlock and transform and innovate in ways that we can't even begin to imagine today. And bringing it back to GenAI, I mean, like, okay, forgive me, it's the it is the buzz of the time, but really it should be, because it's so like it's just intoxicating. It's fantastic the things you can do with it, and I mean, at the beginning I was a little bit of a skeptic. I'm like, I don't need, I can summarize better than I don't need that, the quality, And to your point, in the last 18 months or 20 months, like the rate of enhancement, innovation, right?
Real solutions.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Right. Real, so like the innovation that the model providers are pumping out, that we are kind of providing, from making it easier to access tools, to get the appropriate guardrails, observability, right? Is just like it's
allowing
incredible.
you to do the job better. It's not so when you come back to the analyst piece and how quick it is, it means that the analyst can then utilize this information to be faster, quicker, and provide better stuff to then increase the productivity as a whole. And I think that's the whole story. This isn't about just eradicating analysts and changing it all. It's the whole thing about augmentation, and that to me is incredibly important.
100%. I mean, like the whole, and what we're seeing in practice, what we expect to happen with very high conviction is not like making people more efficient. Like the whole goal here is offloading and automating complex or routine tasks that then enable you to focus more on higher value added, higher order things, right? I mean, think about that example with a research assistant that, many of our quant funds have launched, that Bridgewater has spoken about, Balyasny, and many more, right? Yeah. Use that as like, it's an interface. Like, hey, I think there's a really cool, angle for, a price inefficiency when we come to, I don't know, long-dated oil future contracts and the crisis that we're seeing in the Middle East, right? What's, I don't know, if I have, a feeling that, I don't know, something might happen from a peace settlement perspective, like today, right? What would be the way that I could play that from an FX rates, complicated multi-asset strategy, and it'll come up with an answer, right? Like, and if the answer is, not great, move on to something else. But if it's good, you say, hey, I want to dive deeper into that, right? Then you can say, price it out for me. You can integrate that with another agent, say, what's the best broker for me to execute, right? So kind of optimizing your execution routes, and if you find your right broker, okay, give me a recommendation of what kind of order type, what liquidity venue, how to execute. This is what we're doing with customers, right? And all that, what does that do? That abstracts a lot of manual rote processes, right, that are important, but is that really where differentiation lives? No, it comes to the thinking, right, and how you kind of leverage your own unique IP, your own unique data, your own insights, the human, the SME, subject matter expert component, right, and leverage that to make decisions, right? And that's the whole focus. And I mean, it's funny, like we're seeing this, like Parameta, really great customer of ours, the data technology division of TPI Cap, Interbroker Dealer. They've been speaking, quite a bit on how they leverage GenAI to build an intelligent, triage, email triage solution that responds to incoming client requests to, verify, reference data, end-of-day prices for a whole range of, solutions and securities, right? That previously a squad of people were doing, right? And it's painful, right? You got to get the insight, from, monitor the inbox, right? Then you got to go to, they're using Snowflake, write the SQL query, get the information, validate it with the individual desk, then write an email, dear customer, whatever, type it out, spell check multiple times, ensure you got the right name, because you don't want to use the wrong name. I've never done that, ever. Just hypothetically speaking. And then send the email out. Now they automate that with GenAI, right, to the point where they can, determine the appropriate kind of question coming, the system knows if it hasn't received all the appropriate fields.
Yeah.
So if someone forgets to include, hey, what security am I looking for, like for this swap, and what the tenor is, right? And if it has all the information, automates the entire process,
Totally
saving 90% of the time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just incredible. Like the things that our customers are doing are out of this world. LPL Financial.
It just gets people thinking at a completely different level, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and they can do so much more because the barrier to adoption, that democratization angle you're highlighting, unlocks innovation, right? It lets people, who may not have the technical, ability, but has the idea, right? Has the inspiration, has the vision, execute, right? And like I used to do sales. I don't know if you could tell, right? Like New York fast talker, capital markets.
I love it.
Yeah. If I need to slow down, let me know. I'll try, but no promises. But like, before the wave of GenAI, we saw a lot of firms kind of launch AI-based recommendation engines to customers, right? So JP Morgan spoke at reInvent, which is our flagship customer event in Vegas, about how they built their data, AI, and machine learning platform for their wealth management division, and it drove, I believe it was $10 billion in incremental ARR. And one of the use cases they highlighted was this recommendation engine for their sales team, and advisors that would give advice on what potential solutions to provide to customers, what kind of JP Morgan services, partner services, you name it. And because there's a feedback loop, over time it got really good, right? Now we're starting to see a lot of customers leverage GenAI for these kind of recommendation engines, right? And LPL Financial is a really great example and how they're kind of rolling this out for their fleet of advisors and giving kind of unique insights to customers, to advisors to engage with individual customers. Like think about this, at the individual level, right? On kind of, I don't know, pick something, the 401k, early retirement benefits, and there's a tax benefit if they take withdrawals 3 years earlier. You can engage now. It's incredible.
It's a super advisor, isn't it? And that's the exciting part of it. Alex, this is quite. I do a longer show every week, and I'd love to get you on to do that because this feels like it's an episode that needs a sequel. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been inspiring.
Likewise.
It's been motivating. It's been fun. All of the above. Every box ticked. So thanks so much for coming on to it, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Pleasure.
Really
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.